This video is called How Philosophy Can Help. This course covers the part of philosophy that handles ethics. Philosophy means literally the love of wisdom and by extension the search for wisdom. So the part of philosophy that talks about ethics is seeking wisdom about ethics or about human decision-making in general. Philosophers, of course, are all about thinking, trying to use the intellect to answer the most fundamental questions of human existence. And how to lead the best life from a moral perspective is one of those questions. But there's a problem. We're talking here about human decision-making. You're in a certain situation. You're not sure what to do. So you ask yourself, what should I do now? What would be the right thing to do? And if it's an important decision you're trying to make, you're probably going to end up a bit conflicted. There's one option that people want you to make or expect you to make. There's another option that would be the best for you in terms of getting ahead in your life, the most advantageous. And then maybe there's an option that your conscience tells you is right, but it's going to be unpopular. Other people aren't going to like it, and it won't necessarily help you get ahead either. So you have a problem. How are you going to solve it? Well, philosophers would say, think it through. Use your intellect to decide what's most important and how you can implement that highest value in this situation. But there's another problem. No human being ever makes the decision on the basis of reason alone. That's because we're not just minds. We're human beings, complex organisms that have intellect, feelings, traditions, relationships, and bodies. If we made decisions based on reason alone, we would not be who we are. And we would certainly not be doing what Ignatius of Loyola advised us to do. Make decisions using our whole selves, mind, body, feelings, imagination, and so on. This is a very important limitation on what a course taught by a philosophy professor can be expected to do. I can't teach you to make good decisions. Sorry, that's above my pay grade. But before you ask for your tuition money back, there's an important piece of how to make decisions that I can help you with. In fact, I think I can help you a lot. I think philosophy can help you a lot with it. Even though none of us ever makes a decision based on reason alone, there's always reason involved in our decision processes. Let me try out an example on you. It's a little silly, but it will help you see what I mean. I see a homeless person in my neighborhood. I think to myself, that's not a dignified life for a human being. That person needs a place to stay. Now, I'm 6 feet 2 inches tall, almost 200 pounds, and in good health. This homeless guy here is not as big or healthy or as strong as I am. So there's at least one option that I know is realistically available to me. I'm very sure I could get my arms around him and drag him down the sidewalk to the nearest homeless shelter. It is a realistic option for me. It's physically possible, and it would ensure that his need for a place to live would be satisfied. But is it the right thing to do? Well, probably not. And you probably think I'm a little wacko for considering it. But why do you have the feeling that I'm about to make a mistake, that I'm about to do something wrong in the course of trying to do a good thing and help out a fellow human being? Now here's where philosophy can be very helpful. Philosophers are masters of logic, which is good if you're making a logical mistake. We can help you correct that. Now, I don't think we have a logical mistake here in this example exactly, but philosophers also love to ask the question, what is the principle or rule that I'm applying in this situation? And am I applying it consistently? What's the principle or rule I'm following? Human dignity. I'm convinced it isn't dignified for one of us to be forced to live outside. We all need a place to stay at night. My first idea would preserve the man's dignity with respect to shelter. He would have a place to stay tonight. There's kind of a problem, though, if we ask this question of consistency. If I'm concerned about human dignity, I also have to consider that it's probably not consistent with that principle. It's not very dignified for someone to be dragged down the street against their will. So I'm at risk of trying to honor the principle of human dignity by violating the same principle of human dignity in the same action. It doesn't make sense. And philosophies demand that I ask myself whether I'm applying my principle consistently is going to keep me from acting in such a way that I do think something that even I think is wrong in the process of trying to do the right thing. In other words, by means of reason, I rule out one of my realistic options as morally unacceptable by my own values. Philosophy stopped me from making a mistake I would later regret once I realized what I had done. Now, often when we look at these options, we say, that's not an option. But in fact, philosophy would say, it is an option, it's a realistic option, but it's the wrong option. And when we ask why it's the wrong option, we get down to a principle, which then can help us evaluate the other options. Now it's more trouble to stop and convince the man to walk to the shelter with me, but it turns out to be a better choice than my first bright idea. And it's not the only other option. Here's a couple of others. Call the police. Sometimes police officers are quite compassionate and helpful with the unsheltered. Another is to ask someone from the shelter to come and talk to the person. But what actually happens? Philosophy helps me clarify what I think is right and especially wrong in the situation, but it doesn't actually motivate me to do anything. If I do stop to try and convince him, I'm probably doing it out of compassion, which is a feeling and a matter of the heart. So what's the upshot? The upshot is that the work that philosophy tries to do with regard to human decision-making is that it tries to clarify the rational part of it, understanding that the rational part is never the whole show. Because we're not rational, but also social, emotional, spiritual, physical beings. There are always going to be other factors involved, and philosophy can't tell us much about those other factors. So again, the purpose of the philosophical study of ethics is to help us keep the ways we use our intellect when considering decisions clean, logical, consistent, and so forth. But that's never the whole story. Philosophers aren't better ethical decision makers because of our training. We just think more clearly about ethical issues, and we teach others to do the same. So how do philosophers do that? Well, we have different theories and different options as to how that should be accomplished. In this course, we're going to examine 4 major ways of approaching ethical decision-making. Some philosophers believe that it makes sense to think in terms of pleasure when we're dealing with questions of right and wrong. Which action or option ultimately causes the most pleasure in the world? Others of us think that the most important thing is our intentions, having the best and purest intentions we can. A third group thinks that a person's moral character is the most important thing to focus on, that good actions will take care of themselves if we cultivate good character. And finally, a fourth group claims that the most important thing for all of us to do is to act in caring ways toward one another. And if we pay attention to whether our actions demonstrate care or not, we'll end up doing the right thing. We're going to look at all 4 of these proposals for ethical theory during this course. So there are 4 modules to the course. There's the pleasure module, the intentions module, the character module, and the care module. We'll read the work of the philosophers who pioneered each of these approaches to see how the creators or inventors of the theories articulated them and defended them. We'll pay close attention to the strengths and advantages of each of the theories. And along the way, we'll also notice some weaknesses and limitations of each.